So I kind of wanted to make a reminder video because I've made several videos over the past week or so about affirming, and more specifically what I like to call active affirming, which is when you're affirming a lot, auto-suggesting a lot, a statement or maybe a couple statements, probably just one or two statements over and over and over and over again. Sammy Ingram is the most popular modern teacher that I know of that talks about this well. And I often reference Sammy because I like this approach, even though I don't necessarily like a lot of what she says about other things regarding manifesting and, you know, the 3D versus the 4D and all this stuff. But, you know, that's fine. If you like one thing that, you know, someone talking about these concepts says and dislike other things they say, I always like to remind people of that. It's about finding the one thing or the couple things that work for you, right? That's the first thing that I want to mention. But this is like a larger disclaimer I want to make about this affirming stuff. In regards to my own personal approach and like how I work with clients usually, in regards to feeling better, right? Because my own personal approach when it comes to really spirituality, okay? But manifesting a better life is part of spirituality. It's the most practical part, you could say, for at least many of us. When I work with clients, I just use whatever the fuck I think will work for them. I'll put a link above to a video I did last year. A car video, one of my better car videos, talking about this. I am a holistic type of counselor or coach. For me, counseling and coaching is the same thing. How I use that term is very different than how these law of assumption and LOA coaches use it. I am a holistic spiritual counselor. I want you to feel better. And I feel very confident that if you do feel better, if we can figure out a way for you to feel better, especially if you know about some of these manifesting tools, not only are you going to feel better, but other external things in your life are going to change and improve. So for me, affirmations, what we've been talking about a lot recently in terms of saying something over and over again, or what we talk about even more when it comes to Coué and auto-suggestion, that's just, these are tools. And I love Coué so much because he explains how to use these tools and why these various tools and these manifesting ideas, why they tend to work. Coué explains it, in my opinion, better than anybody because he does it in such a down-to-earth way. He does it in a way that is, for me, I think, the easiest to digest, to be like, oh yeah, this will make me feel better. This is why I will feel better. Or this is how I can help somebody feel better. Or this is why I'm not feeling that good. Or this is why a client is not feeling that good. Or a family member or a friend or whoever. Because so much of this stuff, especially the manifesting stuff, just comes back to your imagination. You could say it all comes back to your imagination, right? But I wanted to make this car video today to remind you that it's not as simple as just affirming or auto-suggesting something. It's not that fucking concrete. Your imagination is this malleable, amazing thing that we don't begin to really recognize the power of. And implementing these manifesting ideas is about recognizing that power more often. But as much as I love auto-suggestion as a tool, a practical tool, like use affirming more and just affirming repetitively, as much as I love it as a practical tool because it works, even if I personally don't like using it in my own life unless I quote-unquote need to a lot of the time, it's just a tool. And like, the reason I recommend watching that video I mentioned that I did last year about being open to any technique is like there's all these other techniques, for instance, like letting go and releasing techniques, right? Like the stuff that David Hawkins talks about, and some of the stuff that like we've been talking about in terms of like just being more intimate with like your emotions, right? That seems like a very different approach when you're just trying to feel what arises fully, than affirming over and over again that you want a certain thing. That seems like they almost seem like opposites, diametric opposites, or whatever you want to call it. But my point is they're not. When you're letting go, the way Hawkins talks about, the way other teachers talk about, surrendering to the moment, you're doing something imaginatively when you do that. It's natural. You can't stop thinking. You can't stop imagining, even if you wanted to. So when you're letting go, when you're releasing, you're doing something. Just like when you're actively affirming and saying something you want over and over and over again, you're imaginatively doing something. So these techniques or tools or approaches to these manifesting ideas that seem different, that people fucking fight about and say, oh, do this instead, do that instead, they're all pointing to the same thing, in my opinion. And they're all pointing to God. If you don't want to use that term, that spiritual term, you say they're all pointing you back to yourself, I guess you could say, to who you are in a deep way. They're pointing you to the peace within you, which is always, in my opinion, accessed right now, in the moment, over and over and over again. Because I know that some people watching this video and these recent series of videos on active affirming are new to this channel, new to my stuff, I just wanted to make that disclaimer video. I feel like I have to make disclaimer videos. I really like making disclaimer videos. I feel like I have to make a disclaimer video like every 5 or 10 videos I do. Because the way I talk about these manifesting ideas is not the way, well, I mean, to be honest, it's not the way anyone else on YouTube is doing it that I've seen. Because it's much more holistic of an approach, of a do whatever feels good approach, than like a certain magical technique. There's no fucking magical technique except for one magical technique. You know what that magical technique is? You. You yourself are the magical technique. And it's about recognizing that more and more, in my opinion. You know? I mean, like, I'm a real coach and counselor. You know? Like, I want to help you recognize that you already are enough. And not in some theoretical, oh, you do this technique, you know, you realize I am, and then fuck that shit. I mean, if it works for you, great. But the point is, whatever works for you works. This is about, in large part, seeing that your imagination and how you're reacting to the present moment, right now, is shaping your life. Internally, externally, whatever. It's all the same right now. So if we figure out how to feel good more often in the present moment, if we figure out how to refocus in the present moment more to what we want, which really ultimately is to feel good, to feel at peace, ooh, our life changes. But it's not as simple as just actively affirming or saying something over and over again, which is why, frankly, you know, someone like Sammy, as great as her advice is, it's a very simple approach. She basically says the same thing over and over again. While here we're talking about different things every video. And one's not better than the other. You might resonate much more with what she's saying than what I'm saying. But what I'm trying to get at here is that there's a lot to this. And it's not just one approach or one special technique. It's you. And when you start to recognize that more, I mean, in my experiences, it's better than any fucking bullshit highfalutin thing you've heard. The truth really will set you free in the sense that, like, you are free right now. And you don't gotta do shit except recognize it. And that's God. That's now. And, you know, probably a lot of people watching this video, the majority of people will not understand this. But if you do, it feels good, right?